What's good, fam? Teacher Eddie back with another oversimplified reaction. Today we're doing Football War, Mini Wars. So I am not super familiar with the Football War. So I thought this would be fun for both of us to kind of discover this together. I have some knowledge of it, but I wanted to learn a little more about it. And I was pleasantly surprised when I found Oversimplified I actually covered this. So I figured, hey, two birds, one stone. I can learn right along with you. And of course, add whatever historic knowledge I have as a history teacher. So let's get started.
Quick, you have 2 seconds to name these two countries.
Oh, shit. I know this big one over here is Honduras. I suck at geography. Honduras, and I'm not sure.
You're wrong, unless you got it right. Then good job. They are, of course, Honduras and El Salvador.
El Salvador! Oh, shit, I should have known that. Again, like I said, I am not afraid to admit when I don't know something. There are plenty of things I don't know. There is nobody, true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. And always being on the mission to constantly be a student and be learning, which is what I strive to do every single day.
Have in common is being fanatic about football. Or if you're a freedom-loving patriot, soccer. But do they love it so much they would go to war over it? You bet they would, and that is no bueno.
No bueno. No bueno. I took, like 5 years of Spanish in high school, and then I had to take 3 semesters of Spanish in college. Even though I already spoke a foreign language, I speak Russian. No bueno. I know what that means. No good.
If you look at these two countries, you might notice one major difference, and that is that this one is a lot bigger than this one. However, this one had a larger population than this one.
Yes, that's true.
Farmers, and there wasn't enough land for them to live and work on. So they started moving from El Salvador to Honduras in search of land. And by the 1960s, a huge number of illegal immigrants had crossed over the border from El Salvador.
That's funny, illegal immigrants. Because obviously illegal immigration is, such a hot button topic here in the United States. But interestingly enough, I know a lot about Honduras, because number one, I dated a few Honduran women, but also I have a bunch of friends who live there, and I communicate with them a lot. And what's interesting is, because we always talk about illegal immigration, as far as, Mexico. A lot of people, the Mexicans are coming in. But it's not Mexico. They go, obviously, because Mexico borders America, they go through the borders in Mexico. But a lot of, because one of my friends who lives in Honduras is a cab driver. And I also know another, coincidentally, cab driver who lives in Mexico. And they both tell me the same thing, that a lot of, especially criminals, who are fleeing these, South American countries, whether it be Honduras, which is just extremely, not just, a poor country, but there's a lot of violence there. They flee through Mexico to get to the United States. So, and this is not an issue just in the Americas, but throughout the world as far as illegal immigration goes. And of course, soccer. A lot of people say, American football. They're like, why do they call it football? They use their hands all the time. But that actually goes back to the origins of American-style football, because American-style football was basically a variation of rugby, right? Rugby football. In that, your feet are used to, kick field goals, things of that nature. So it was basically, it came from the origin of the game. That's why it was called football. But yeah, there's a huge difference in style of play between football and football.
Meanwhile, in Honduras, it's 1963, and this guy has just staged a military coup to prevent the rise of communism and is now the military leader of the country. He immediately began harassing the peasants' unions and other left-wing groups, but he's a little insecure about the legitimacy of his leadership. So he holds an election and wins. But then the opposing party says, hey man, that election was clearly corrupt and fraudulent, and also you've been bribed by the rich American...
A corrupt election from somebody who overthrew the previous government. So, yeah, there were a lot of coups going on at the time. Of course, the most famous one in 1959, when Fidel Castro overthrows Batista and takes over leadership of Cuba. So, yeah, this was a frequent event that was happening, around this time.
Banana companies who are taking all of our bananas tax-free, and now our economy is in ruins, and everyone started to get mad at him. Now, if you ever find yourself the barely legitimate military leader of a corrupt Central American country, and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Blame something else. So he blamed the Salvadoran immigrants for stealing all the land and all the jobs and ruining Honduras. The immigrants found themselves under attack by the hostile locals, egged on by the rich American banana companies who wanted all the bananas to themselves.
It's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. Yeah, so this goes back to the banana wars. So the United States, it wasn't just bananas. They wanted to exert their influence and power throughout, South America and all the Latin American countries. So after the Spanish-American War in 1898, you had the Treaty of Paris, which gave America control over Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines. So it was surrendered by Spain. But the United States continued to colonize further and took over and occupied countries like Cuba, like Honduras, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, so on and so forth. Bananas were a big deal, but the term banana wars didn't come around until the 1980s. And it was basically used to try to explain the rationale behind these wars. But at the same time, another huge influence for this control in the region was the Panama Canal, right? Which, was a huge undertaking by the United States. So in order to, keep control, they wanted to assert their dominance, basically, in again, these South American countries. So yeah, the banana wars, it was part of it, bananas, but it was not everything. But the shit was bananas. Bananas.
The Honduran government began evicting Salvadoran immigrants who had been living on the land for generations and started sending them back to El Salvador. The Salvadoran elite were furious and protested, citing moral reasons, but in reality, they were just getting a little too crowded. So tensions were about as high as they could be, but then...
Yeah! Ronaldo! What's good, son?
It's the 1970 World Cup Qualifiers, and both countries finished top of their qualifying tables, so it was now time for them to play against each other in...
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster. It's actually interesting. Again, as I've said many times about my teaching style, I like to incorporate things that, students normally don't expect, whether it be debate classes, and I use like Marvel versus DC, for example. I use a lot of sports in my history classes because sports are so tied to not just American history, but world history, right? Whether it be the Munich Olympics, right? Hitler was like, finally, I'm going to prove my point here and show them that the Aryan race is superior. And then Jesse Owens was like, yo, Adolf, hold my sneakers, man. Whether it was at the same time with the, Nazi Germany, tensions, Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling for the heavyweight championship. This was a huge deal. Joe Louis, the brown bomber, held the belt longer than any other heavyweight champion in history. Shockingly defeated by Max Schmeling. In the rematch, Schmeling comes in as this national hero of Germany, and he's Hitler's boy. Joe Louis destroys Max Schmeling in the first round. Schmeling, unfortunately, then suffered at the hands of the Nazis for the remainder of the war. And there are so many other instances of this. And also to the other point about, blaming, that's not just a dictator thing, that's a power thing. This has been done, recently in this country, right? For example, after 9/11, I talked about on my September 11th video, every time, the people started questioning what was going on and why are we going into Iraq, they would start creating these threats, right? These man-made threats. Anytime there's a scandal, anytime people start questioning things, anytime the government wants you to divert your attention, they create these falsehoods, so to speak. But let's continue.
In a series of matches. The first match took place in Honduras. The night before the game, Hondurans gathered outside the Salvadoran team's hotel, making noise and taunting them. The next day, Honduras defeated the exhausted Salvadorans with a late 90th minute goal. After the match, a young Salvadoran fan, unable to bear her country's defeat, shot herself.
Oh, wow.
Disturbingly, the Salvadoran government glorified the incident and made her into a national hero. And at the next game, fans brought pictures of her to the stadium. Emotions were running high as the next match took place.
Yeah, when it comes to soccer, football, the fans are literally fanatics. The amount of riots, fires, deaths, murders. Actually, I watched a fascinating documentary that ESPN did, 30 for 30. They do amazing work. The 30 for 30 series is so good. And it was called The Two Escobars. And it was about the drug narco traficante kingpin Pablo Escobar, who I'm obsessed with. Just that whole history, and I love the show Narcos on Netflix. And there was a soccer player. I think it was Andre Escobar. And it takes place in the mid-90s, I think 94, because I remember it was around the time of the O.J. Simpson murders and all that stuff. So in 94, Colombia is on its way to winning the World Cup. And Andre Escobar is like the star, right? And in one of the games, he accidentally hit the ball into the opposing team's goal, and they end up losing, and they don't win the World Cup. And then he was murdered for it, which, it's just absolutely insane. And this is at like the peak of Escobar's reign of terror, and car bombings, murder of police, murder of judges. It was a war zone. So the dichotomy and comparison of the two Escobars, absolutely fascinating. If you haven't seen it, 100% recommend watching The Two Escobars. Really, really good.
Place in El Salvador, and this time the tables were turned. The Hondurans had to endure a sleepless night in their hotel, and the next day, before the match started, instead of the Honduran flag, the Salvadorans raised a dirty rag. So great job at reducing tensions. El Salvador
That's more like a flag of surrender.
The
They're like, man, we just give up.
While spectators battled in the stands. Team Honduras fled home in a bulletproof bus with rocks being thrown at them, and the Honduran coach reportedly told his players that they were lucky they lost. In response to the defeat, Hondurans began terrorizing the Salvadoran settlers even more, in some cases reportedly throwing them off their land and burning down their homes, and the immigrants began fleeing back to El Salvador. The final game in Mexico would decide who went to the World Cup. It was close, but El Salvador came out victorious, knocking Honduras out of the tournament. The atmosphere is riotous, literally,
close.
And back in Honduras, attacks on the Salvadoran immigrants further increased. This was too much for El Salvador to bear. With its people under attack and an unmanageable refugee crisis on its hands, El Salvador severed all diplomatic ties with Honduras and declared war. The football war is also known as the 100 Hours War, because that's how long it lasted, making it one of the shortest wars in history.
100 hours, that's 48, 96, 4 days and 4 hours. Yeah, it's shorter
El
than the
Salvador
6 Day
started
War.
by carrying out air raids on strategic locations within Honduras, including Toncontin International Airport, which prevented the Honduran Air Force from getting into the sky. Then, with their superior army, they began an invasion along two major roads, complete with light tanks and infantry. Their advance was rapid, and they were quickly approaching the Honduran capital. Then the Organization of American States met in a bit of a panic and unanimously agreed that war between El Salvador and Honduras was a bad thing and probably shouldn't continue. So they went to El Salvador and said,
It was more, again, protecting their interests, right? It wasn't that, oh man, that ain't right. They're fighting, man. We should step in and bring in peace. Nah, they ain't give a shit about that.
"Can you please stop invading?" And El Salvador declared, not until they stopped being jerks, and so the war went on. The Honduran...
Yeah, but why would El Salvador agree to that? They're whooping ass, man. It's like Tyson Spinks over here, man.
Air Force finally got into the sky, and with aid from neighboring Nicaragua, they successfully carried out air raids on Salvadoran air bases and oil facilities, crippling the Salvadoran supply line and stopping their advance dead. Caught in a bit of a stalemate, the situation was no longer advantageous to El Salvador, so when the Organization of American States once again asked them to stop and agreed to ensure the safety of the Salvadoran immigrants, El Salvador relented, and a ceasefire was organized on the 18th of July. Then the OAS said, "Can you now please withdraw your troops from Honduras? No, please, no, please, no, please, no. Do it or we'll sanction you."
That's basically like, I'm gonna tell your dad. No. Don't tell dad. Don't tell dad. It's cool.
You know what? Just for you, I'll do it. So El Salvador pulled its troops out of Honduras on the 2nd of August, and with casualties in the thousands, the war was over.
Damn. 6,000 killed? That's 4 days and 4 hours, man. That's insane. 6,000 people killed in 4 days. Wow. 15,000 injured.
The economies of both nations were down.
Again, a lot of people sometimes get confused.
With casualties in the...
Just again, every chance to teach, right? So a lot of people, when they see casualties or casualties of war, a lot of people and most of my students think casualty means somebody died. So when they hear casualty, they're like, oh, the dead. But no, casualties are the dead and the injured. So if you're injured during the war, you're still considered a casualty of the war, even though you didn't die. So I just wanted to, add a little tidbit there, here and there, where I can.
Thousands, the war was over. The economies of both nations were damaged by the war, and El Salvador didn't have the capability to take care of all the returning immigrants, a crisis that eventually helped cause a civil war. The war left behind land and border disputes, some of which are still a cause of tension to this day. El Salvador went on to play in the World Cup, but lost every match they played and didn't make it past the group stage.
Oh, damn.
So in the end, nobody achieved anything.
Wait a second.
Lost every match they played and didn't make...
Yo, El Salvador didn't even score a goal. Man, they got whooped by the Soviet Union. Wow. Speaking of the Soviet Union, another like sports related history is of course the Miracle on Ice, the mighty Soviet hockey team, and of course the Rocky type story of the Americans. That's another great little lesson there. If you've never heard of it, look up the Miracle on Ice. Even though the Soviets, when they benched Tretiak, I was like, what the fuck, man? You're putting the greatest goalie in the history of the sport on the bench, just asking to get whooped.
Get past the group stage. So in the end, nobody achieved anything, and there were no winners. Except for this guy.
Yeah, I was about to say, man. Peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Oh, there he go. There he go. There he go. Taking your country's bananas, tax-free. Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. I like that. Yeah, so very interesting. I learned, a couple few things. A couple few things there. But again, it's just such an interesting, for me, it's just something I love. The parallels of sports and historic events, especially in the United States. Like for me, baseball is the big one. Baseball kind of tracks with the history of this country. and baseball was like, not as much today, but back in the day, 70s, 60s, 50s, and before, it was like a religion in this country. That's why literally, stadiums are called cathedrals, right? Yankee Stadium, the cathedral of baseball. And you have these gods, monuments to them and retired numbers. And, it's just so fascinating. So this is the type of stuff I really enjoy because, it also makes learning interesting. And yeah, I mean, people have gone to war for various things, but much like, because a lot of people come to me for advice. And the one big lesson I've learned over the years is the vast majority of the times when people are coming to me with a problem, whatever they're telling me the problem is not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. And you got to peel the layers back to get to the root cause of the actual problem. And things like this, again, whatever the reasoning may be, it's usually not the reason that the war happened, right? They obviously didn't, go to war literally over football. But this kind of gave the backstory and explanation of what caused the animosity. So very interesting, oversimplified. I love y'all, even though you give me a hassle with the copyright stuff. But either case, I'm going to keep doing it because you guys want to see it. And I really enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Let me know what other videos you'd like me to react to. Please, no music requests, though. I don't want to deal with the copyright issue stuff. I'm kind of, done with the music stuff. Unless it's, of course, epic rap battles of history or any other rap battles. But, just don't want to deal with the headache, basically. But either case, check out the links in the description for my social medias, my email, and, of course, ways to support me, whether it be Discord or other means, Patreon, and, of course, links to the podcast. I've been Teacher Eddie, and I'll catch you next time. Fam! And as always, shining out the Patreons who keep things running here, starting with the Chancellors, Elena G, Nazvanyu, Douglas C, KP, the Hollow King, the Principals, Aaron Shepard, Addison, Clement, Vijandra, Rachel, Alex, King Panda, Freeman, Moody Kakari, Nathan, Chad, Chris Debago, Sophia, Robin, Lord Gandalf, Luna, Harry, Robin, and Blue Tech. And, of course, Rasmus. I've been Teacher Eddie, and I'll catch you next time.